This is Other Perspectives. I'm your host, Nancy Kaplan. It's that time of year, time to take an overview of Ann Arbor in 2011 and a perspective view of what 2012 may have in store for our community. My guests tonight offer a broad perspective of Ann Arbor. Jane Lumm is the newly elected Ward 2 City Council representative. Jane upset the incumbent Democrat to win a seat on council as an independent. Susan Pollay is the executive director of the Downtown Development Authority since 1996. She has seen and been involved in significant changes to the downtown, the city, and the DDA. Rayan Stanton is a reporter with the AnnArbor.com since its inception in July of 2009, specializing in government and politics. As a digital journalist, he has reported on a broad range of issues, from the skate park to marijuana and the city budget. Welcome all. So glad you're here. You all get a sense of citizens' views from their feedback and their input, whether it's from comments in the paper, comments at public speaking time at meetings, emails, polls. So you're pretty informed. And I'm sure you're aware that it's been a pretty event-filled 2011 here in Ann Arbor. And citizens have been speaking up, as we said, on crosswalks and marijuana. And I'd like to start the conversation by asking for your comments on an issue and then let you each bring up an issue to discuss. So my first issue is city government and the changes in leadership. Roger Frazier, who had been our city administrator for 9 years, has left. Ms. McCormick, who has been our administrator of public services and has been here for a decade, has left. And we had the defeat of an incumbent Democrat, so that council, for the first time I think in approximately 8 years, is no longer all one party, no longer all Democrat. And I'm wondering if you think these are impactful and significant changes, or maybe not. What are your thoughts? Did you want to start, Susan?
Well, yeah. Well, as a longtime DDA staff member, I've been in my role since before a lot of those people came to their positions. So I've had a chance to see the transition before their role and now after. And a key component over the last many years under Roger Frazier's management has been a reorganization of city staff and the city organization. I'm a longtime resident of the city myself, and I have to say from the outside it's been fairly invisible, but from the inside it's been full of a lot of changes. We went from having about 22 department heads to having 4 area managers and having a lot more cohesiveness within the city organization so that services could be provided more efficiently and effectively. And during that time, I think, again, it was seamless to the outside world, but inside, a lot of us knew a lot of different roles were changing. With the new city administrator, I think there's an opportunity, again, for someone to come in with a fresh eye and see it from a perspective of how can we continue to improve city services even with diminishing budgets. And I know that the city administrator, Steve Powers, has spent a lot of time in his first few weeks meeting with members of our community, trying to get an understanding from their perspective on how they see things so that he too can have an impact at shaping city government.
Very good. Anyone else comment? Ryan?
Yeah, no, I'll add to that. I mean, there is a loss of institutional knowledge that comes with losing your city administrator of 9 years, and we just brought on Steve Powers, the former Marquette County administrator, to be the new city administrator for Ann Arbor, and he's still getting up to speed. He's been here, what, 2 or 3 months now? Mm-hmm. And you know, you saw just this month the council decide to not hold an annual budget retreat this December, which is the first time I've seen that happen. Because they want to allow the new city administrator to still get up to speed. Sue McCormick leaving, she was one of the top city administrators in terms of carrying a pretty heavy workload. But if you ask the mayor and some other people, they say the rank and file is there to step up. There's a lot of institutional knowledge within the city's workforce, and the city isn't losing a lot of people into retirement this year. Only outside of 9 people retiring from the police department, which are going to be replaced according to the mayor. Yeah. There's only one other worker, an ASME worker in the city that's retiring. So you do still have a lot of institutional knowledge within the the work base, which is about 700 employees, down from 1,000 a decade ago.
Right. Jane?
Well, Ryan and Susan certainly have much more knowledgeable about this transition because I'm coming in on obviously the back end of that, and I've had the opportunity to meet with Steve Powers, of course, and personally and at public meetings, and he's kindly navigating my orientation to these other departments. It is all changed since I was on, as Susan described, but there are some. There are enough folks still with the city today that I remember from, quite a few years ago, who, I think provide that sort of institutional memory. And I'm very impressed with the fact that Mr. Powers, who's only been here a few months already, I like the fact that he can build his own team, if you will, right. And he's already put some folks. Well, most notably, Craig Hoopy in as interim service area administrator, replacing Ms. McCormick, and that to me, just right out of the chute, seemed like a really good call on his part. But and I've already been at some meetings with some other council members where Mr. Powers has is running the meeting, and he's provided the kind of information to my colleagues who have been there obviously for a while, and their comments have been, wow, sort of, I've never seen this presented this way before, this sort of information. So he impresses, I think, certainly me and again my colleagues, and I think the staff.
I think I'm going to have to jump in because there's one thing you haven't brought up, and that is Jane. And I think from your reporting and from the Chronicle reporting, that is also a major change, and I think that we can't overlook the fact that Jane had support across the city, and we're expecting also some new ideas and some fresh perspectives because of that, and some change in alliances, and maybe some things to get changed and to be done. We saw what's going to be on the agenda for next week, about who can be appointed, and if you're staff, you shouldn't be appointed. So I wouldn't want to diminish the idea of change at council, council. So let's hear your ideas now. What do you think was really impactful in the past years, and maybe tell us why, some of the ramifications. You want to start us, Susan?
Sure.
Please?
Well, one of the biggest events to my mind that took place this year was all the work and all the meetings that then led the ATA board to come to agreement around a 30-year transit master plan. DDA has been a enthusiastic funder of Go Passes for downtown workers for about a decade, because we've, as a group, understood that the future of downtown economic viability, and in fact our community viability, needs to involve transportation as a key component. And it was very exciting to see the work that they did, and I thought it was very skillfully done to really talk to a lot of people throughout our county, to ask their issues, to understand their priorities, and pull that together and distill it into a 30-year master plan. I'm excited about that work because I think it sets a path for us all to work to build so we can get the kind of services we need if we're going to see ourselves moving forward. Very, immediately things like in strengthening the transportation along Washtenaw Avenue, connecting Ypsilanti and Ann Arbor. That's absolutely fundamental. The airport service is going to be something key. With service starting in downtown and taking you out to the airport, it's a part of what I think our future is going to be about. But all the other services that they're looking to do in the future, including door-to-door, out-county service, say between Chelsea and Dexter, connecting all the communities through transportation is huge. And in my time, we've not done much about things like transportation because it goes outside our borders. Right. And we've been limited by borders. It has shaped our thinking and reduced our ability to solve problems. And this is a big, bold vision they've set forward, and I'm very proud of them.
Anybody have agree?
I agree. That's perhaps the top issue that went on in Washtenaw County and Ann Arbor in 2011. The ATA is very aggressively moving forward with a county-wide expansion plan. They've put out a 30-year plan, like Susan said, that outlines about $600 million worth of capital improvements to do to the system over the next 30 years. And as they ramp up and try to identify funding for that. There's going to be some significant talks in the coming months and the coming years about going to voters possibly with a 1 mil countywide transit tax that could be layered over the existing 2 mil tax in Ann Arbor. When I talked to Michael Ford, the CEO of AATA, he said that's not the only option they're considering, but it's one of the leading options. There's also the gas tax and sales tax. But it's possible, maybe overly optimistic, that this could come before voters in November 2012 at the earliest, but more likely in 2013. But we're seeing already the council was asked this week to consider a 4-party agreement to sign on to the initial part of expanding the ATA.
Right, and you had some issues, you had some concerns
Yes,
about that.
And I think this is an example, much like Fuller Park, if you will, where I think the city, I mean, no question there's a vision that's been articulated by AATA and throughout all these, they've had a robust program of public meetings, but the one thing that I think has been that's missing from all of this is and I think again I mentioned the Fuller road station because in that same regard the city the folks involved in this conversation I don't think have done the necessary upfront due diligence before embarking on major projects or commitments. And what I'm talking about here is for all of the participating communities in this regional master plan, if you will, and for the city certainly to understand fully the financial commitments and funding plans before proceeding down the path for projects like, again, the AATA countywide initiative that we reviewed at Monday's work session. And folks say, don't worry, there isn't a funding plan yet. We can back out later, but in the meantime, there's a lot of staff time invested. That's money, and so I do think that when we go off on these, planning and visionary discussions about, whether it's transportation, well, in both cases it's transportation related, but we should know precisely what the commitments are, both in terms of one-time capital and the ongoing operating and how it's all going to be funded. And I think for these public meetings, yes, they're gathering the input from lots of people, but I think at the same time you need to ask the questions, would you be willing to pay for X, Y, Z? And that has not been asked.
And the paper did a poll. I wonder if people understand when they pay for how much they'll really be paying. And today, just before I came over here, I heard on NPR that Governor Snyder is really pushing a transportation plan for southeastern Michigan. So this might be moot, depending on what the governor really pushes for.
Well, the ATA plan would maintain autonomy from the RTA that's being talked about, the Regional Transit Authority that's being talked about for Metro Detroit and the county surrounding it. So we would still, there would still be an effort there to push forward with.
Push forward with it and not connect in with the rest.
There would be some planning to connect the the two bodies, if you will.
Right.
And Washtenaw County could buy in. Conan Smith, the county board chairman, is actually in on the planning discussions with the governor and that team that's talking about that.
Mm-hmm.